selling human body parts like trinkets at a fair. That is one of the allegations in some of the lawsuits now against Harvard and its former medical school morgue manager. The man was selling human body parts, that's the allegation, out of his home in Goffstown, New Hampshire. When a loved one dies, people need closure. People want finality. People want to know that their grief, as bad as it is, has some kind of finality. But that is anything but the case in the case of the former Harvard morgue manager who was selling body parts out of his home. After the indictment, a few weeks went by, and now class action lawsuits against the school. Shouldn't they have known? He was driving into the morgue with a license plate that said Grim R. And his wife had also a very strange license plate. What was going on? Shouldn't somebody have known? In this episode of About the Law.
You would think that with a license plate like Grim R advertising themselves as this Grim Reaper, that Harvard would have done a little bit more to investigate this person before letting them work there.
I mean, you know, vanity plates are big, especially in New Hampshire, because they're a lot cheaper than in Massachusetts. They're really expensive down there. But, you know, if you're trying to pull something off, I mean, I don't think robbers have a license plate that says, I'm going to steal or I steal or something like that, you know? I mean...
Bank theft incoming. At least he was transparent.
Well, but I mean, how did he get away with going in there every day for 5 years? You know, was the period of time that the indictment alleges that he was dealing in human body parts, and nobody suspected, really?
I don't know. I would trust the person working in the morgue with the license plate Grim Reaper, wouldn't you?
And his wife had a crazy license plate, too. Maybe now is the time to remind people that...
Thank you guys for watching. This is About the Law. I'm Lainey Law, and we're here with attorney Andrew Myers, and we're going to talk about the newest updates to our Harvard body part series.
So, Lainey, the funny thing was there were a couple of big developments just in recent days. One is that some of these body parts ended up in Kentucky, and the other is that there are now class action lawsuits raising all kinds of crazy facts. So I'll let you pick. Where do you want to go first? To the crazy facts in court in Boston or to Kentucky? I'll let you choose.
Oh, gosh. You know what? Let's go because the whole story is a little bit more local. Let's start off with Kentucky. Let's hear about what's going on over there. How can we get all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, all the way to Kentucky?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Here is page 1 of a complaint. USA against James Knott is the man's name. And it starts out, I'm not going to read every word of it, but the FBI was watching the man. They were watching what was going on in Massachusetts with Harvard Medical School morgue. And it goes on that in June of 22, the East Pennsboro Township Police Department received a tip of possibly human remains located at the residence of this gentleman, Pauly, who lived in Enola, Pennsylvania. And they talked to him, they talked to some other people, and they followed a search warrant to his residence, and they found human remains, including organs and skin. And he was putting these things on Facebook. They were screened. Yeah, look at the fourth line up from the bottom. Sarah Pauly provided officers screenshots of Facebook communications between Pauly and a person named Chapman, and during the course of subsequent FBI investigation, it was determined that Chapman was employed with a mortuary located in Little Rock.
That is
So-
insane. So
and
when
then-
we were talking about last time, though, not to sorry to interrupt, but we were possibly thinking is just like, how are these? Like, where do you even buy these body parts? I guess Facebook. Like, hey, look what I got in the mail today. Jeez.
Well, yeah, look, they were looking at her Facebook account within the last year, and she was Facebook friends with a person who used the name William Burke, which, by the way, is kind of interesting because that's the name of a mass murderer in years past. If you look at the footnote, William Burke was a serial killer active in Edinburgh, Scotland, between 1927 and 1827 and 1828, along with his partner William Hare. Burke and Hare sold their victims' bodies to Dr. Robert Knox, an influential lecturer in the anatomy department at the University of Edinburgh. So this guy that was selling this stuff used that as an alias. So communications between the two included PayPal information in which the Facebook user William Burke provided his PayPal user information, and he used an address of Love Avenue in Mount Washington, Kentucky. So they looked in a little bit further, and there's a picture. Law enforcement officers have viewed Knott's public Facebook page and have seen him post human remains for sale on Facebook.
Oh my God.
As-
$10
As recently as June 2023, the following images were obtained from Knott's Facebook account with the username William Burke. So this stuff was on Facebook. Anybody could see it. I mean, Facebook is worldwide, right?
This, like, I'm just sitting here. It's like we have Grim R and we have Skulls on Facebook, and it took how many years for this to get caught? Like, this,
5.
Yeah, it's like.
That was on Facebook, right there. Look at that picture. On or about June 13th of 2023, Polly Lodge and 4 other individuals were charged in the Middle District of Pennsylvania with a violation of the U.S. law.
With 51 likes and hearts.
Oh, good grief. And so they started following these people. And on the evening of July 11th of 2023, law enforcement officers with the FBI executed a search warrant at this home in Mount Washington, Kentucky, and he was the only person there. Upon arrival to execute the lawful search, an FBI agent asked Knott if anyone else was inside the residence. Knott responded, quote, "Only my dead friends."
Oh my God.
So they searched the place. They found a lot of guns. They found, at first, just one AK-47, and then it goes on.
Just the casual AK-47, some dead friends.
Then paragraph 24, in the course of the lawful search of his car, FBI agents located a crate with 3 AK-47s.
Oh, yeah. We only have one in the house. We keep the other in the car.
Right. And behind the driver's seat of the Chevy on the floorboard, FBI agents located 10 fully loaded AK-47 magazines with additional ammo in an ammo box. And so they continued. Paragraph 26. In the course of the lawful search of the residence, FBI agents located human remains, including approximately 40 human skulls, spinal cords, femurs, and hip bones. The skulls were decorated around the furniture. One skull had a headscarf around it. One skull was located on the mattress where Knott slept. A Harvard Medical School bag was found inside their residence. Uh-oh.
That bag made a long journey. Branded.
So Harvard can't walk away from that one. Well, you can actually go to the tourist places in Boston and buy a Harvard bag or a T-shirt, but a bag full.
Store. Souvenir.
During the course of the investigation, I reviewed court records regarding Knott. According to court records, he had a lengthy record. They go into some felony violations, possession of unregistered destructive device, and all that kind of stuff. And so they go into his history, guns, marijuana, another revolver, and during his interview, they Mirandized him, and he he admitted during the interview that he frequently used marijuana. No big deal, but not further admitted that the bags inside his house were his. According to the interviews conducted of residents of the other apartments, there was a complaint made to the landlord regarding the marijuana smell. So that's the complaint against this gentleman. And so, I mean, the guy had 40 skulls and some other stuff in his house. So, I mean, when you moved into your condo, don't get mad at me, please. Don't get mad at me if you want. Don't most women head over to the home store and buy decorations, curtains, maybe a couple of nice paintings? Isn't that what people do?
I'm a big fan of Burlington Coat Factory.
Okay.
Personally, they got a lot of pink going on. You know, as far as decorations go, you know, Home Depot, we get some plants. I like to collect some plants occasionally. I have some friends that collect pop figures. Skulls, you know,
that's
not on my list of decorations.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, most people, when they move into a new place, they buy some wall hangings and, you know, that kind of thing. And they go, there's home goods stores and things like that where you can go. But who would think to go to the morgue and buy skulls and things like that?
I'll just take 40 skulls from Harvard, you know, some AKs, grenades.
You know, I know people that collect stamps, and I know people that collect coins. I used to collect models. I actually know a guy that collects model airplanes. But I mean, 40 skulls, really?
Yeah,
anyhow.
I mean, the way, like, also, like, consider it, like, aside from the fact of the absolute horribleness, is like the way that I consider it, and you might not understand this reference at all, and I apologize, but for anybody watching that, you know, ever played games originally, it's like the original Pokemon was like 150, and that was a huge feat. That guy's like almost a third of the way there. That's like that really, it's not just I found this. It's we're gonna get some skulls. That is a hefty collection.
I can understand gamers and goth people and other people who collect various stuff, but usually it's like plastic and it's fake, or it's something you hang on the wall, or it's something that you buy at a joke shop. It's not like the real thing. But again, this is all allegations. All of these are allegations. None of it's been proved in a court of law yet. But now, do you want to go down to Boston and see what the papers have actually shown that have been filed in court?
Oh, goodness. Let's see it. All
right. So there's a couple of class actions, and we can't look at all of them, but just in the short period of time that has elapsed since the initial indictments, a bunch of class actions have been filed. This one was just filed in Suffolk County Superior Court. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you see the date stamp showing that this is a legit document that was filed. Class action filed individually by one person on behalf of others similarly situated. That's what a class action is. And they're suing the president and fellow of Harvard College and a bunch of other individuals. And it arises allegedly from the defendant Harvard Medical School's failure to effectively screen, monitor, and supervise their employee to protect the dignity and integrity of donated human remains, and ensure that those remains were utilized for the exclusive purposes for which they were donated, namely research and medical training. Now, someone might say, well, that's a generality, and, you know, of course they're going to say that. Hang on, let's take a look. Now, the ghoulish black market was allowed to flourish in plain sight, operated by a Harvard Medical School morgue employee whose lack of respect for the dead was obvious to anyone who scrutinized his behavior. It is alleged that he drove to work each day and presumably parked in his Harvard parking lot with a license plate identifying him as the, quote, Grim-R, as in the Grim Reaper. So they must have attached a photograph of that license plate. That was not in the documents that I was able to receive. The Grim Reaper posted images of himself dressed up in the garb of the Undertaker in a Dickens novel with a black top hat and overcoat.
Oh my God.
Again, I didn't get that photograph in the documents that I was able to receive, but when we receive them, maybe we'll have to update this.
Oh my God.
His license plate and open association with the macabre hobbies revealed his view of his job at the morgue as a backdrop for his fantasies instead of a place of reverence and respect. The undertaker invited his cohorts who fetishized human body parts to the morgue to the shop. The Grim Reaper publicized his mocking moniker, all while treating the morgue as an amusement park attraction for his friends and customers. So the allegations go on. They go on and on. I'm not going to read every word of it, but this is legalese, I guess I have to say, to us attorneys, what this page represents is what you have to do to certify a class. This is law school civil procedure 101. You have to have numerosity, you have to have typicality, you've got to have adequacy, you've got to have superiority, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you've got to have enough people with the same type of damages, and you need to certify to the court these couple of qualifications. And so they go on and on talking about the qualifications. Commonality and predominance. The following questions, common to all class members, predominate over any potential questions affecting individual class members. Whether defendants owed a duty of care, plaintiff and the class's family members that were donated to Harvard's anatomical gift program. Because remember, we're talking about people, I should have given more of an introduction about Anna Weiss, who was the named person in the class action. Her father had a lifelong history of donating his time. He was a doctor. He donated a lot of time to the library and to other causes, and when he had a stroke in his 80s, he decided that he would donate his body to science and signed the documents with the Harvard Medical School morgue so that after he did pass away, science could use his body to do research. And then he did pass away in his 90s, and Anna went through grieving, and, obviously she felt that there was some finality. But then when the headlines of the indictment hit, the rest is history, and she is the number one person in the class action. So that's the background of the number one person. And imagine the other members of this class having gone through what they did. This page just summarizes what I just said. Dr. Buchanan, that's Anna's father, had previously executed an instrument of anatomical gift entitled Consent and Authorization, Disposition, and Declaration as to Remains for an Anatomical Gift Donation. Now, this might seem like boring legalese, but it's important. In a few minutes, you'll see. As per the HMS requirements, Dr. Buchanan's remains were delivered to Harvard Medical School's morgue within 24 hours of his death. And, she felt that everything was final and she could go on with her life. Mm-hmm. Within days of reading about the sale of human remains at HMS in the news, Anne received a letter dated June 14th. Dr. George Q. Daly, the Dean of Faculty of Medicine at Harvard, his letter indicated in part that at this time we cannot rule out the potential that her father's remains may have been impacted. Imagine going through that. I mean, just imagine going through that. Based on the facts presented in the press and detailed in the federal indictment, it is apparent that this potential will never be ruled out. The illicit sale of body parts is an inherent risk of any entity or institution that houses human remains. How was Harvard to have known that something like this could have happened, you ask? Well, in the 20 years leading up to the arrest of Cedric Lodge, there have been dozens of well-publicized prosecutions and lawsuits related to the illicit sale of human remains throughout the United States. The following is a small sampling of publicly available information on the sale of body parts. And as someone who is a regular reader of newspapers, and the old-fashioned paper kind, this kind of surprised me. The Philadelphia Inquirer published an article in 2007 explaining that 3 funeral directors held in selling body parts. They took remains without permission from 244 cadavers, an indictment says. Skip over to page number 40. Likewise, the New York Post published an article in 2009 entitled New Jersey Funeral Director Sentenced in Case of Selling Body Parts, which can be found at, and then they give the website. They talk about a UCLA case. They talk about a morgue at the University of California in Los Angeles. So these issues are brought up so that to establish that Harvard Medical School's morgue should have known. So the standard negligence standard that every civil attorney in the country knows is that to bring a negligence case, you must establish that the defendant you're suing either knew or should have known of the risk that then came to pass. So here we go.
Like a recurring thing that, I mean, just any situation, it's kind of crazy to think that you wouldn't have more, like in a position like that where you're dealing with human bodies, like even if they're not currently alive, you expect there to be a little bit more surveillance, you know.
So Harvard knew or should have known when all these things, have happened all over the country. Here, Harvard Medical School either did not have a strict auditing practice which would have detected Lodge's malfeasance before it was allowed to persist for a period of years, or if they did have such guidelines, they failed to follow them. Otherwise, the Grim Reaper would have been exposed before he was able to act, to the devastating detriment of hundreds of families. So to assure that the human remains donated to HMS did not fall prey to this well-known black market, HMS leaders should have also taken other basic precautions in the management of their anatomical gifts program. So they go on and on with the kinds of things that they should have taken a look at. Remember in the very beginning, I said that his license plate was Grim Reaper and his wife also had a license plate? Here it is. He came to work each day in a car with the flippant vanity plate Grim R. Instead of harvesting souls as the Grim Reaper does, Lodge and his wife, her plates say Dark Shadows, were reaping body parts for sale.
Oh my God.
Well, so a basic routine interview with Lodge about his vanity plate may have led to the revelation that he and his wife frequented social media sites focused on macabre hobbies associated with the occult, including the collection and trading of human remains. His wife's public Facebook page included pictures of Lodge dressed up as a fictional undertaker. So, I mean, people that I know, I don't know, they post pictures of their vacation. They post pictures of their kids. They post pictures of, I don't know why it is. I know a couple of people that post pictures of blankets that they've, what do they do, crochet them, macrame?
Yeah, knitting, yeah.
Some people post pictures of the dinner that they're eating at a restaurant, which I've never understood that. But anyway. These people were posting, Facebook pictures of him dressed up as, whatever. So
I think it's crazy. They're very transparent about everything. All of these people that have been involved, it's like they're knocking on the guy's door. Who's here? It's just like me and my dead friends. It's just like there's like a little interview talking about the vanity plates. It's just like, yeah, we love scary occult things. We love dead body parts. Like they're very transparent. It's crazy that they got away with this for so long.
And most places that you work, most but not all, are fairly social. People, if they don't party together, they at least have lunch together. They might take a walk at lunchtime. Especially in the academic atmosphere, which is a little bit less stressful. I hate to say that, and people might comment, but I said it. The academic atmosphere is less, go than the business context. So people in workplaces tend to know each other, tend to know each other's kids, tend to know each other's, habits and interests. So if you're an employee of the Harvard morgue, how is it that a guy drives to work every day with that license plate and has that as his interest and has these things on a Facebook page? How is it that passes for 5 years? I don't get it. Maybe somebody can explain that to me.
Especially when it's like everybody, when you meet someone, it's just like one of the first questions that people usually ask is like, oh, do you use Facebook or something like that? Like some type of social media.
Right.
So it's like these people, like people knew they had to have. This person's like casually talking about the license plates during like an investigation. Like how are his coworkers not going to know this stuff?
And even if you don't ask, I mean, you meet new people at a new job, you know, even if you don't ask, don't you kind of creep them and say, oh, geez, I have a new friend. His name is John Doe. Why don't I go on Facebook and check him out? Don't people do that too?
And these are posts that like we saw before. I mean, it's a different situation, but it's like the post like or same situation, different scenario, but it's like posts with like 50 likes. Like who's getting 50 likes on their Facebook post and their pictures of skulls? Like that's crazy.
I can't see him getting away with this any more than 60 or 90 days, but this went on for 5 years. So let's go to the next page. Defendant, here we're talking about Harvard breached this duty by failing to take reasonable steps to ensure that the remains of her father were properly handled and or maintained for their intended purpose of scientific study and otherwise dignified disposal, and were not sold to the highest bidder for household decoration and other nefarious purposes. I mean, that should go without saying. Mm-hmm. And then this just goes on with, after they state the facts in the beginning of the complaint, they go on to the various counts of the complaint, and it's basically just saying, you know, based on the facts above, we have these causes of action against not only Harvard, but also against the morgue manager and the other people that worked there. And, you know, so that is that particular lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And it's only, like I said before, it's only one of a number of them. Let's take a brief look at one more, because we'd be here all day if we looked at all of them. But here is one of them, and this one was actually brought in the federal court, Federal District Court of Massachusetts in Boston. And this fellow, Robert Johnson, is an individual residing in Bradford, which is right outside of Haverhill. And it names Harvard, number one, then Cedric Lodge, number two. Says that the court has jurisdiction pursuant to the correct federal laws. Defendant Harvard, number 7, advertises and promotes its anatomical gift program through HMS and HMS's website. As part of the program, individuals are invited to donate their remains to HMS for the advancement of scientific and medical research. So it goes on. We skip down to number 16. Defendant Harvard and HMS employees were and are not permitted to remove, keep, or sell any human remains, including the donor cadavers in whole or in part belonging to a donated cadaver. I mean, that should go without saying, shouldn't it?
I don't know, really, because you would think that they were allowed to, considering how many they got out. It's just like, hey, how you doing today? It's just like carrying my body out. Like, were they really not allowed?
That's crazy. Then we jump to number 23. At all times relevant herein, Defendant Lodge stole dissected portions of donated cadavers, including, for example, heads, brains, skin, bones, and other human remains without the knowledge or permission of Defendant Harvard or Harvard Medical School. Again, these are allegations, folks. None of this has been proven. These people have a right to a defense. They have a right to a day in court, which will come. But that's the allegation, that they were taking home heads, brains, skin, bones, and other human remains, which, okay. Plaintiff is the biological son of Ann Weaver, who died on June 4th, 2017. Prior to her death, Ann Weaver arranged with Defendant Harvard and HMS to donate her body as part of the anatomical gift program. 33, upon information and belief, Ann Weaver's remains were one of the many donated cadavers mishandled and desecrated by Defendant Lodge, as referenced throughout this complaint. Based upon information and belief, between 350 and 400 donated cadavers may have been involved in the Defendant Lodge's unlawful conduct and scheme. Remember before I said we'll get to the part about the contract? People might have been bored by the fact that I read that this was a contract. Well, one of the causes of action is breach of contract. 42, Defendant Harvard breached the contractual agreement with donors by allowing the donor cadavers to be mishandled and used beyond the scope of medical research and study as advertised and promised through defendant Harvard's anatomical gift program. So, breach of contract, emotional distress, negligence, those are all the causes of action. Then, just like the other class action, it goes on to talk about the different causes of action. One is breach of contract. The one we're looking at now, count 3, is reckless infliction of emotional distress. Defendant Harvard's conduct was extreme and outrageous. That goes without saying. But actually, legally, those are buzzwords indicating a cause of action for reckless infliction of emotional distress, which is pretty tough to prove, actually. You've got to prove a number of elements, but these are allegations, and my guess is that it's a pretty good case for that, actually. This is going to go, if proven, if these allegations are proven, this case will go into the law books. Negligent supervision is another cause of action. As defendant Lodge's employer, defendant Harvard breached its duty of care by failing to take reasonable steps to ensure that the donated cadavers were being properly and lawfully handled by its employees, including defendant Lodge, and maintained as part of the anatomical gift program. Harvard had a duty to supervise Lodge. Harvard negligently failed to supervise Lodge. That word failed should have been in there. But other people wrote this complaint. Very good lawyers wrote this complaint, but I would have put the word failed in there. As part of its anatomical gift program, defendant Harvard induced members of the public to donate their bodies for the advancement of scientific and medical research of the human body. And then it goes on, just the various complaints. So my question to anyone really is, he took 400 to 500 body parts or cadavers. I mean, briefly, before I went to college, I worked and during summers in college, I worked at an electrical parts warehouse. They supplied conduit and light bulbs and fixtures to electricians who then, wired up houses. And they watched us very carefully. You couldn't get a light bulb out of that place. And this is a long, long, long time ago, because this is before I was in college and when I was in college, and look at me now. But they watched us very closely. You couldn't get a light bulb out of that place without being watched. How did this guy get 400 or 500 cadavers or body parts out without being detected? I don't get it.
Completely incomprehensible. And I mean, you think about just any place you work is even at restaurants is just how many people at restaurants it's a slap on the wrist for taking trash bags or something ridiculous.
Right.
And it's just we talked about before, is just 40 skulls is an absurd amount. 40 skulls is a collection. 400, that's a tenth. 40 is a tenth of 400. That is just an incomprehensible amount.
Yeah, I don't get it. That's a lot. That's an awful lot. Ask
for people that aren't as familiar with law, what exactly is a class action lawsuit?
Class action lawsuit is a group of people that are similarly situated, and we looked at the terms before. You've got to have numerosity, you've got to have similarity, and you have to have a certain number of people that qualify for the class. And you file the suit alleging that you have a class of people, all of whose cases are similar. And the courts like these and the courts don't like these. The courts like them because rather than 25, 30, 250 different people bringing different lawsuits and the court having to dispose of 250 different lawsuits, it's all brought as one lawsuit, and you just try it once, or you settle it once, or you go to a committee that deals with all of the allegations. The courts sometimes don't like them because it's very technical, and you have, again, it's law school civil procedure 101, and you have to delve into whether or not all of the claims are similar enough to certify the class. And that's going to be the next step in these various class action cases, is whether they certify these people as classes. Often they do, often they don't. But there are class actions for all kinds of things, for defective medical devices, for vehicles that break down, products liability, medical types of things. So that's what a class action is.
And some people watching may have even, like myself, I've gotten a random check from when I used to work at like TGI Fridays that there was some kind of class action lawsuit. So even if you're not necessarily involved with the case, I guess you can get settlements, it seems, like just anybody affected. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a check one time. I got a check one time for $2.34.
Millionaire.
I said, yeah. I couldn't even buy a cup of coffee for that these days. And what it was is that a certain bank that'll remain unnamed, I had taken a bunch of rolled coin into the bank. And the bank, that wasn't good enough to them that I had counted the coins, 50 pennies in each little container. No, somebody actually took the time to undo them and throw them into the coin counting machine. Well, unbeknownst to me, that coin counting machine was inaccurate. And so there was a class action of all the people that had gone to that bank over the years and given them rolled coin. And so there was a class action, and I didn't know about it. I probably threw the mail out that I should have gotten. I probably did, and I threw it out. So I never opted out. And in the end, there was a settlement for the class of people that were similarly situated and harmed. And I got a check for $2.34.
You're rolling it. Listen, that could have been money that you hadn't invested. Think about that.
I know.
100% interest on that.
Exactly. But, hopefully a lot of class actions are much more serious than that, like this one. And, but a class action would be pretty much anything.
And now, like a class action case is a civil law case. How is this different than the criminal case that started with Harvard and the morgue manager?
Well, a criminal case is the state against a person alleging a violation of some criminal statute. A criminal case involves the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the state of New Hampshire or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania bringing a criminal charge. And in a criminal case, the result can be, if the allegations are proven and if there's a conviction, the penalties are either a fine and or jail time and or probation. So it's a personal criminal matter, whereas in a civil case, it's largely about money. People are looking for monetary compensation, whether it's for a breach of contract or for emotional distress or for the undue influence that Harvard placed on them. And a civil case is an individual against another civil party, in this case, Harvard being a civil entity. So criminal is the state against a person. Civil is a person against another person or entity.
Okay, so, and like you said perfectly there, it's like person versus person, person versus entity versus state versus...
Right.
Do you think, how could Harvard defend themselves in this situation with the lawsuit? Because like we talked about before, there is precedent set where body parts have been sold before. Do you think Harvard, I imagine they have some type of defense. I imagine all the lawyers that come from there, but it seems pretty damning for them.
Well, yeah, but again, remember, as I said at the very beginning of our podcast here, these are allegations. Nothing's been proven. And under the Constitution of the United States, everybody has a right to a defense. Everybody has a right to a fair and speedy trial. And so in exercising that right, I didn't go there, but Harvard has a great reputation. Great lawyers come out of there with a lot of smarts, and that they will have a lot of eyes looking at this case. There's always the defense of statute of limitation, that they waited too long. I don't think that applies. Or latches, that that the plaintiff sat on their rights for too long. I don't think that applies. A very technical defense is that not all of the elements of each of these counts have been fulfilled. In other words, whether you're talking about negligent infliction of emotional distress, reckless infliction of emotional distress, breach of contract, each of these counts has elements that have to be fulfilled. And so attorneys will take a really close look at each of those things. For example, in the count for breach of contract, I don't know what the contract says. I really don't know. So someone will take a look at the contract. Of course, I doubt if any contract in the world says, well, yeah, we can use the body to decorate our apartment. But they will raise some kind of a contract defense. They will raise some kind of a defense based on whether all of the elements for reckless infliction of emotional distress is a very difficult tort to prove. As I said, going through it, it looks like they have the elements here, but we don't know that. So they have a right to a defense. They'll defend it. If I had to speculate, and it's only that, it's only speculation on my part, at some point these cases will be settled short of a trial. That's my guess. Because Harvard has already, to their credit, the higher-ups at Harvard have already issued statements indicating their shock and horror and disbelief at all of this at the same time. As I said before, it's hard to imagine, 400 body parts going out of there over a period of 5 years. But they have a right to a defense, and they will bring a defense. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, Harvard, hopefully these people get, due compensation, the victims. But even for the people buying these body parts, like, I feel like, obviously, like you said, everybody has right to a fair trial, but there's no way that they can get out of anything with this.
Well, you don't know. We don't know. We don't know that. Everybody has a right to a fair trial. Everybody has a right to an attorney. Everybody has a right to a defense. And so, it's easy for us to sit here and say, how can they justify that? I mean, how can you justify having 40 skeletons in your house? But these are all allegations. They're unproven allegations. We don't know. There might be fruit of the forbidden tree defenses, and what that means is if there was, if the search warrant wasn't issued properly, or if the search of the property went beyond, there will be motions in limine to exclude certain evidence. But I don't know. As I sit here today, these things have just happened, and we don't know really what's going to happen down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just crazy to comprehend. Like most people, like, who even knows 400 people? I can't name 400 people, even if I tried. It's like crazy to think. It's like we have 40 schools, we have some schools for sale, some shops, but like there has to be more of these body parts that are going to pop out.
Well, that's a good point. I was just thinking, that's one more point I wanted to make before we say, bid adieu to our audience here. And that is, it's only been, as we sit here doing this podcast, it's only been about 30 days since the initial indictments came out. And they've already found these body parts in a couple of places in Pennsylvania, in a curiosity shop in Peabody, Mass., and now in Kentucky. And if they were selling these things over a period of 5 years, and if they're alleging that 300 to 400 cadavers or parts of cadavers were removed, where else are they finding these things? I read the complaint, the affidavit by an FBI agent, and they're looking to track these things down. So if these people were putting these things on Facebook or other social media, who knows? Facebook isn't like, it's not like in the old days, and I'm old enough to remember when, you'd get the newspaper and you look at the want ads, and, in those days, this might not have gone any further than Massachusetts, where Harvard is, or New Hampshire, where the manager lived. So, in the old days, you got the newspaper and you read the want ads. Facebook's not like that. Facebook is everywhere, right? So who knows? These things, maybe they're only looking on the East Coast. Maybe this stuff, maybe there's more in the Midwest. Maybe there's more on the West Coast. Who knows? They were mailing this stuff out of the post office, so you can mail stuff anywhere at the post office.
And it's like, aside from Facebook, I mean, like, even in websites like Reddit and stuff like that, it's just like they found the Facebook post, but like, who's to say like there's not more accounts on the internet that they haven't found? It's crazy.
And the other thing is, maybe you know more about this than I do. I don't know. We've all heard of the black market, but they were talking about how this is on the red market. So I don't know anything about the red market. I guess it's the deep dark web. I think we were talking about this. We were talking about this one time, a long time ago. The dark web, which is someplace down below where you and I can go on our Facebooks and LinkedIn's and Twitters and Instagrams and everything else. So there's a place where people know how to go, and I guess if you have the right passwords and all that kind of gobbledygook.
Yeah, I mean, even on YouTube, there's plenty of videos on YouTube of people trying to get onto the dark web and people using like these extra browser stuff and getting onto it. It is like it's a place that I want to stay far away from, but it's crazy that it seems like the internet that we know is so large, and then on top of that large internet there's like a layer below that where equally sized and we don't even know the type of sketchy things that are happening on our regular internet. On the classic web there's already people posting this on Facebook, like nightmare fuel.
So as creepy as it is, and it is creepy, my prediction, and I've predicted correctly and incorrectly in the past, but my prediction is there's going to be a lot more of this. I think that this is like a deep, dark thing that some people are into, and I think it's only been 30 days as we do the podcast now, and they've found the stuff in all these different places I mentioned a few minutes ago. My prediction is there's going to be a lot more revelations coming in the future.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned before that they may settle. What would be the next steps for this class action case?
Well, like I said before, I'm sorry, go ahead. What was the question?
No, I was gonna say it's just like we're hoping that, I guess, that it just gets settled and that it doesn't have to go any further, I guess would be the hope.
Well, when there's a class action, after there is certification, then there's what they call discovery, and what that means is, each side can ask the other side questions, both written and for documents, and there can be depositions, and then after that, a committee is formed, and a committee of the attorneys, and then the fight is always to get the chairmanship of that committee. And they lobby very, very, very hard to settle the case because trying these cases is expensive and it invokes some risk. And you need to have experts. Even in a case like this, there are cases where it's just so obvious you don't need an expert. I don't know enough about the case yet at this time today, but they probably need an expert to prove at the very least the extent of the damages. And so that's very expensive. And so both sides, the attorneys for the classes, and also I would imagine Harvard, this is only speculation on my part, but in answer to your question, they'll work to see if they can settle it, and they'll try and figure out what it would take to resolve it. And, I don't know. That's a different question for a whole different day. Mm-hmm. How do you put a price on the emotional distress in a case like this? I mean, you can't put a dollar amount on the distress in a type of a case like this. There's just no way. So
when you don't even know where the bodies are, it's like there's no chapter closing for these people.
No, and even if you do know, I mean, suppose you find out that your father is now a skull in somebody's living room. I mean, how do you put a dollar amount on that? I mean, I'm an attorney and I've tried many, many, many cases over many, many, many years. And they'll get experts to figure it out, and that's where it is right now. We're at a very early stage in this particular case. That's all I can say.
I know. Well, thank you guys. If you watched up until this point, thank you guys so much for watching. It's a horrible case. It's pretty unbelievable in my opinion, but we do appreciate you guys watching with us until the end and learning about this chaos. But thank you guys for watching. This has been About the Law. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Yep. Thanks again. I hope that you like this type of content that we've given to you, even though today's subject was a little bit grim and macabre. But if you like this type of content, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe and give us your comments down below. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others.
If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions.